we started it up and it runs brilliantly. There's only one small problem. There was a leak, an oil leak. The oil leak was coming from the exhaust, this side, but more commonly from the stud. So I took the exhaust off and look what I found. Oh dear, what a complete nightmare. That's been totally mullered. It's leaking oil, which means that it's been drilled into the oilway. There's an oilway in the head and it's been drilled out and it's in the oilway, so now oil is actually pouring out. Not pouring, but dripping out sufficiently. Look at the contamination. So, what's the cure for that? Well, there is a quick cure, and the cure that I'm going to use, and that quick cure is another head, which has got good studs, and in fact this head's in really nice condition. I've had this head for ages. Good job it's the right side. It's in good condition. The valves need to be taken out and lapped in to make sure they're got good seal. Then I'll have to take it off and replace the damaged head. So nothing finishes that easily with Project GS, does it? So, first things first, I've taken all the crash bars off, I've taken the exhaust off in order to look at the damage. Now I'm going to show you how to take the head off. Pull the plug lead out with the special adapter. That's a special adapter you must have to pull that plug lead off. Disconnect that, put it up out of the way. Then spin these off. Spin them all off until they've undone. And then disconnect it. Make sure you've got something underneath to catch the oil, because there will be some oil come out. Just gently pull it out until it's completely free. Tip the oil into the bowl. Check to make sure there's no filings or anything unusual in there. Don't forget this central rubber. That's going to be important when you rebuild it. So now you can see there's the rockers, the valves, the camshaft is down inside here, driven by a chain. So you've got to like disconnect that, and the head bolts, which we disconnect all of that. The rocker assembly comes off, and then we can completely pull the head off. Got to remove. Now we have to take the throttle body, trunk in, throttle body, and I'm going to take the manifold off, because obviously I'm replacing the head. Normally you wouldn't have to take the manifold off, you'd leave that on, but I'm going to take it off. So we get them off, out the way. This front cover, front engine cover, take that off. And then this little cover here, take that off. Remove both spark plugs. Fit a spanner on the crankshaft bolt and turn the crankshaft clockwise. Remove, turn the engine, looking into that hole there until you can see the line with OT on it. So you have to get that line lined up. When that's lined up, make sure the head you're working on has got clearance on both valves. Then that means that that piston is TDC firing, so there's no pressure on the cam. Then when you look at that sprocket, see that arrow? That arrow should be pointing where that one's pointing. That way then you're in a position to disconnect the cam chain. Loosen that nut, just loosen it, don't undo it, just physically loosen it. Then in here you have the cam chain tensioner. You must remove that tensioner completely before you undo that bolt. And also you've got to tag the chain and the sprocket together. And once you've done that, they then can't move and they'll be in the right position. I'll show you how. Undo the tensioner. Pull it out. Pull out the spring. And then stick a magnet in there and pick up the actual cup to remove that from there as well. Once you've done that, then you can start undoing this bolt. 3 parts of the tensioner removed. Now loosen this bolt off, but don't remove it completely, just loosen it off. Remove the bolt completely. Wrap a cable tie around the sprocket and the chain. Make a nice long cable tie so that you can easily get hold of it. If it falls inside the engine, you can then retrieve it quite comfortably, easily. That means now that the cam chain is disconnected from the head. So now we can remove the head bolts and remove the head from the engine. Now it's just a question of removing all the bolts. You've got these 3 Allen bolts. 1, 2, 3. Then medium-sized bolt there. This one's a Torx. Sometimes they're Allen, but this is a Torx. Don't forget the washer. Then the 4 main head bolts. Undo them a bit at a time. I mean, I'm not reusing this head, but if you was reusing the head, obviously you've got to be careful you don't distort it. And you do that by releasing the bolts gently. Bolts. Notice the way they go up. That bit faces the washer. Remove all 4 nice and easily, nice and gently. Then once all 4 of those ones are removed, we should be in a position where the head will now, laughing, come off. Let's have a look. Nah, didn't think it would. So we've got to give it a little bit of a tap. Tap with a rubber hammer, just breaks the seal, and then just gently pull it off. making sure that the cam chain doesn't get caught. Gasket's coming up with a head look. There you go. Done. Head removed. That's the oil feed holes. The feeds all up to the valve gear. Now I know we're going to replace this head, so it doesn't really matter too much, but this shows us some interesting stuff. Look at the head, look at the seal, nice and shiny. Yep, that's all okay. Yeah, that's fine. And then we get to there. Oh, look at that. That's an indication it's not been sealing. Look at the gasket in the same place. The gasket has been compromised. So this gasket, potentially, it's been leaking. So this was due for a replacement anyway. So what we're going to do now, we're going to disassemble the head, because you're going to take everything out of the head, the camshaft, the push rods, the rockers, so that we can transplant it into the new head, and then obviously we can put the new head on, and that's how we'll affect the repair. So let's have a look at disassembly of the head. Now we're going to remove that screw, that one, that one, that one, and that one. Don't touch these, just those 5, because those 5 screws hold it to the head. So if we remove those 5, then what happens is the complete top end, the camshaft, push rods, and the followers, rockers, come away as complete item. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Five items, 5 bolts. Then that will allow the complete to detach from the head. Notice you get the camshaft, the followers, the push rods, everything all in one hit. And basically, if you haven't moved them, potentially you can go straight back in. Now we'll carry out an inspection of that before we actually put it all back together, just in case there's anything that needs to be looked at. And on this particular head, I'm going to have to take the valve caps off, so basically disassemble the valves, because I need the caps and the collets, because the head I've got, the replacement head, hasn't got the caps or the collets on it. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to grind the valves on the new head to make sure they're fine, and then reassemble the new head with all the valves, test the valves, and then ready for reinstallation. Right, so what we're looking at now is removing the valve. So we're going to compress the valve with a valve spring compressor, and then remove the collets. So you put the compressor on and you compress the spring. Once that spring's compressed, you're then able to get into and see the collets. The collets are very difficult to see. I use a magnetic screwdriver because you can get one out, and then the other one out. Like so. Once the collets have been removed, you can then remove the spring and the cap, and then that is a valve removed. So to reassemble it onto the new head, it's exactly the same but in reverse. There's a little tiny bit of a problem when it comes to doing the collets because they are a little bit of a pain. I'll show you. Here's the new head. We're going to put that spring on this valve here. So one of the things to do, little trick, is to get some ordinary grease, cover the end of the valve, a little bit of grease, and a little bit, and then get a plastic, when I use a thing for getting trim off, but a little plastic tool like this, cover it in grease, because this is what we're going to use to put the collets back on. If you use a screwdriver or something like that, it's probably magnetised and it'll probably pull the collets off. It's an absolute nightmare. This job isn't the best job, but it's got to be done properly. So you put the spring and the cap on, you compress with a compressor like so. That allows you an opportunity to gain access to the end of the valve stem. Glue a collet to the end of the thing and just push the collet into position. Once that's in position, get the next collet, make sure they're the correct way up. Put the next, then put the next collet into position and gently disassemble. Oh, look, the collets come off. Yep. Disassemble. Ensure that both collets are captive, because if one of those comes out when it's running, it'll drop a valve. That's it. It's an absolute swine to do if you've not done it before, but using that little tip with the plastic trim remover and a bit of grease is the way to do it, basically. If you try doing it any other way, it's an absolute pain. So do that to all four valves. As you can see, I've done two here. Do that to all four valves, and then we can test the valves. So you pour fuel into the inlet tract like so. And then you check to make sure there's no leakage from around the valves. You do that with the inlet, then you turn it over and do it the same with the exhaust, and then when there's no leakage like there, you know that the valves are sealing correctly, and then the head is ready to be put back on. Alright, so now what we've got to do now, we've got to look at this top end. Now the first thing to do, take these three bolts out, because when you take these bolts out, it allows you then to remove the rockers from the assembly, and then we can have a look at the push rods and the rockers themselves to make sure they're all in good condition. So 1, 2, 3. That comes off. Now you look at that to make sure that there's no horrible scuffs or scores or anything like that in there, then you can actually remove the rockers. And then you can look at that, make sure that's in good condition. Every single bit of this has got to be cleaned up and inspected. Look at that bit there. Remove this rocker. Same thing. Pull the rocker out. Pull this rocker out. This one looks like it's stuck. There it is. Push rods. You've got to make sure that each end is secure. Next thing you're going to do is look at the crank of the camshaft. Now if you look at the camshaft on here, this camshaft is scrap. Look, that's scrap with chips out of it. Massive. So, bad news. So that's got to come off and be replaced. So yeah, push rods are okay. Camshaft's not. Rocker, although that rocker's moving quite nicely on that shaft, that shaft's not coming out. All stripped down now. Look at every individual bit. There's the followers. They're in really good condition. The camshaft is not. The camshaft will have to be replaced. The push rods there, they're in excellent condition. The followers in excellent condition. The mounting plate, everything is fine there. Everything is in excellent condition, essentially, except for the cam. So we'll replace the cam and then we can rebuild it all.